What's up, guys? I'm Salty Mike, and this is your week in review for February 18th, 2020. Sorry I'm a day late, but real life stuff happens, and as many of you guys know, I do not do this for a living, so sometimes things in my normal life do get in my way of things that I love to do for fun, and these kind of videos are some things that I really do enjoy. So, jumping right into it, we had quite a busy week. We had some patches this week, specifically 3.8.2 PTU. And this is something that is hyper exciting, where they're adding the baby persistence to the game. And this is something they've been hinting at for quite a long time, mentioned it at CitizenCon, and it never quite came until now. And a lot of you have hated on my thumbnails and some things specifically around the wipes, and it looks like we may never see those again, necessarily. I think they'll probably cue us that, hey, we're going to be wiping completely and having the economy start over and see how you guys do. So Baby Persistence will remember your ship purchases, your UEC account, your FPS weapon and armor purchases, and your ship component purchases as well. So any real significant progress that you make in Star Citizen currently will be saved until the next patch. It's kind of questionable or not if they'll start us over at 3.9. Leave a comment below, let me know what you guys think, if they'll probably start fresh at 3.9. I think maybe, but maybe not. There was also a 3.8.2, and this goes back to the account reset that we talked about, I think, last week. This will now remember those purchases. So when you do an account reset to fix some issues that are regarding other things on your account, it'll still remember how much UEC you have, ship purchases, and all the previous mentioned changes. Moving on to roadmap updates. There wasn't one, but last week they said that they'd be putting in 4.1, so, you know, in typical CIG fashion, they can't even update their updates, right? I don't know, but basically, we saw in a Valentine's Day post that they were going to be mentioning a certain ship added to 4.1, which is the Crusader Ares. I find that really exciting, really different, because we'll be talking later about a different Crusader ship that they talked about. So Crusader Ares is the only thing that we know is going to be on the 4.1 roadmap, but like always, I'm just going to kind of breeze over the fact that 4.1 even exists because it's too far away to matter. We've been through this many times before. We're going to go through it again. That ship will likely sail, I guess, and not be on the roadmap in 4.1 in a matter of weeks, months time. Things change. So I have no desire to really follow anything on the roadmap other than the closer up stuff. Specifically for these weekly videos in the future. Obviously, we'll mention the fact that something's added there, but not really add too much emphasis other than that. Moving on to video updates, we had an additional video this week. We had Pillar Talk, and this was recorded at CitizenCon months ago, and I won't be diving very deep into this video because it's old news. It's a lot of stuff that we already know about, and it was a lot of just them talking, and they just talk and say things with what feels like no regard for what is actually going to happen sometimes. So let's start with their Pyro system discussion. They started to talk about the next system, and what sticks out to me here is something that a lot of us know already, but just in case you didn't, Stanton was chosen for a reason to be the first star system.
It was good training to start in probably one of like the two or three most, of all the solar systems planned, you know, one of the two or three most difficult in terms of 4 planets, 12 moons.
Four landing zones.
It's the landing zones, yeah.
It's the landing zones.
But if we'd started...
Pyro's a lot lighter weight.
Well, the point I'm making is it's forced us to basically deal with a lot of the most complicated problems sooner in the process so that going forward now, we've got a solid foundation to deal with, you know, any quantity of content, you know, decoupling, you know, the frame rate from necessarily, you know, how much stuff needs to be loaded by any given server and things.
Stanton is such a complicated system that it has so many elements to it, so many landing zones, so many different types of planets that in the future we can expect them to have learned from their mistakes, learn lessons, and just in general, other systems are way more bare than Stanton is. So I think we can expect them to finish Star Systems quicker than they finished the Stanton system, which has been years in the making at this point, right? Another little bit of tech that should allow them for a system like Pyro to come sooner rather than later is something they discuss here.
And also the Planet Tech V4 is allowing them to, like
Pyro,
I think has
6 or 7 planets.
6 or 7 planets.
And then a lot of moons.
I think we're only going to have a couple of landing zones, but it's not, it doesn't have the population density of Stanton, but there's a lot of places you can visit. But, we have the tools, and we'll probably be, Pyro is sort of a hotter system. So we're going to have, that's where the active status
comes in. Everything has been, I just feel like we're starting to really coalesce everything, right? And that really excites me for this year.
Again, this is nothing like major, monumental, or anything like that, but it does kind of imply that it's very possible that we'll be leaving the Stanton system in 2020. That's kind of exciting. My sort of expectations are maybe around CitizenCon. I don't know what you guys think. Now, I said I wouldn't touch this, but my salty Mike self couldn't control himself.
For instance, if you're in a system like Pyro, where there probably won't be a lot of stations that you can go and get fuel, you may want to be able to collect fuel yourself with your SIP, or someone can make a good living by selling it to people in Pyro.
One of the next occupations up will be, salvage, and I would expect it, any kind of like lawless place, a lot of conflict. You'd have a lot of debris, a lot of derelict ships, a lot of stuff to salvage, a lot of value for people that basically want to, strip, whether it's the hull of a ship or the internal components.
The fact that salvage and ship refueling has been moved so many times, talked about so many times, I can't even bear to listen to them talk about it again. What do you guys think? What emotions does that invoke when you hear them talk about things that they've constantly feels like they've dangled in front of us and then just ripped away over and over again? I don't think they're doing it maliciously, but it does get frustrating after a while. We've also been hearing about volatile cargo, so the fuel that's mentioned here, do you think that that's what they're talking about? And do you think we'll see salvage in 2020? We also had an Inside Star Citizen that was pretty full of details, but we're going to start out with stuff that we already knew about, and it's the camera improvements in 3.8. And the reason I'm choosing this clip is not because I think it's like a super important one, but I felt the personnel choices that they made here for the flight experience team were a pretty cool story.
So we started to work on the third-person camera first. And then we looked at, well, if we're going to do the third-person camera, let's do the first-person camera as well. So we looked at bringing someone in who's really good with the first-person experience and who's really passionate about that. So towards the end of last year, we brought in Yogi.
I joined CIG in summer 2017 as a senior audio programmer. Though over the course of the last year, especially during the middle, I started investigating a little bit more into head tracking. Also, I'm currently a glider pilot in training. So there's a lot of little things which I feel I could bring into the vehicle experience to make it just nicer, more immersive and more exciting.
It's very cool to see someone that knows what it's like to be in a seat of a plane, choosing what the visual feeling is going to be like sitting in a spaceship. I think that's really great. And we get more details on the work he did here.
I played flight simulations pretty much since I was a child, and one of the most important things you can do in flight simulations is to look around in your cockpit, right? It gives you a really good feeling of getting immersed into that thing. And the natural contact point with that is head tracking.
So we had two options. We've got the option where you kind of look where you're turning, or you look where the ship's traveling, and there's two different things. So we developed the first-person camera to support those features and also give the players the freedom to tune the camera either way of how they wanted it to feel.
Now, I just play the game out of the box typically. After watching this, I feel like I should probably dive into this a little bit more and choose which mode I prefer better, because for me, the standard mode of look ahead that's been added into 3.8 makes ship combat a little bit weird feeling. So have you guys enjoyed the changes to the cameras? Why or why not? And a thing that takes me back here to one of the best players I've ever seen play Arena Commander back in the day. His name was Hydro Big Bang, and this clip reminds me of him.
Head tracking players will be able to gimbal their weapons again. So when they go into the manual or free mode, as we call it now, they can just go somewhere, look to the left, have their weapons gimbal there, fire, and then they can look back and the weapons will follow again. Another thing we added in this regard is that we give the user options for how big the dead zone, for example, for mouse users is, or how big the range of the aiming reticle or the VJoy is on the screen. So these are just a couple of things which we're improving. They're not big things, but they're things that make the game just feel nicer.
So this dude used TrackIR to aim his weapons and legit never missed. Never. He was the best Arena Commander pilot I had ever seen. And, you know, as combat has kind of been dumbed down, he's just kind of faded away. And I wonder if this kind of stuff might bring a guy like that back to the game. The one thing that I was upset about this segment of the show was that there was no mention of ESP. And ESP has really been kind of the bane of a lot of players' existence. And to not hear it at all was kind of upsetting. And speaking of things like this, they touched on combat improvements, sort of.
One of the big pillars for the vehicle experience team is space combat, because ship balancing and weapon balancing and flight balancing itself is pretty much owned by the vehicle experience team. And what we want to do in the future is not just make dogfighting or fighting or space combat better, but have a really structured approach and very clear designs, how things should be and why they should be. And so a lot of things, especially regarding vehicle gameplay and space combat, is going to happen in the course of 2020. And I'm really excited to see the results at the end of the year.
I don't think this statement can get any more vague. Like, all of their statements on the subject of combat in a spaceship are extremely vague and just ridiculous. Like, Todd Pappy mentioned a few weeks back on Star Citizen Live that he has a vision of how it should work, John Crew has a vision of how it should work, and Chris Robertson has a vision of how it should work. How do we not have, like, some cohesiveness here, right? And I think this is why they're being vague, is because they're still trying to figure that out. Now, part of me thinks that that's okay. Figure it out. Work together. You know, you have ideas, I have ideas. Let's bring them together and see how they work. But it's 2020. This is the year that we're supposed to be getting Squadron 42 in beta, as far as the roadmap says. And how can we, if we still don't have an idea of how we want to do these things, right? So that's what really stuck out with the vagueness of the statement and all these things in the past just kind of coming together into this one thing. So what do you guys think about that? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Then Jared moved on to the Sprint Report. This is one of the more popular segments on Inside Star Citizen, and the reason why is because it has literally zero polish and just shows us what's being worked on. Wonder why that's so popular. I got no idea, guys. So they started all right away, just all on the new prison system with a boxing ring, shanks, and some early images of the suits that we're going to use to work off our merits. And then they iterated more on Planetech V4 to add more organic feelings, it seems like lava. And this image, they said, was from Cellin, but it's clearly preparation for Pyro, as Pyro has a very lava theme to its system. They showed us a new harvestable, Heart of the Woods, for the temperate biome of Microtech. Also, little visual features for Microtech, and VFX for the new consumables that we'll be getting in mining for 3.9. This one we won't see in 3.9, but work is going back into atmospheric entries, and they are looking awesome already. Also, 3 new ships were shown: the Cutlass Blue, which is considered white box, a lot on the Carrack, and the one that I was most excited for, the Crusaders Hercules Starlifter, right at the end of the show. So just a nice little in-engine version of that they're going to use to work out any little kinks with the concept. So guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I apologize for being a little bit late, but I do hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did. Leave a comment below on anything that we discussed here, and hit subscribe for more weeks in review. And I'll see you guys next week on time, I promise. Promise.